Hi, so this is my discussion forum for chapter 9, I believe. So I'm going to be talking about corporal punishment. And so the first question says, what surprised you about how corporal punishments are used in schools? So I think what surprised me the most is that they're still used. I had no idea that there were still schools that allow that to happen. So that was really surprising to me. According to the ACLU Violent Education Report, 21 U.S. states permit corporal punishment to be used in schools, and I had no idea that that was still able to be used. And then it also surprised me that it said in 2006 2007, um, including 49,000 students in Texas alone. Um, like that is how many students had corporal punishment used on them, and I was very surprised about that. Um, just because I have never seen it in schools. When I was in elementary school and middle school and high school, I never saw the use of corporal punishment, so it was very surprising to me that that's still able to be used because I know like when I know my dad would talk about when he was in school in like the 60s and 70s that it was used then, and I just thought that that was a practice that had kind of gone out of use, but apparently not, so that was very surprising to me. So the next question says, given what has been found regarding the negative impacts of using corporal punishment, do you think it should be used in any scenarios? So I think no. I think that it can be very detrimental to a student's education, because um, that's a very severe punishment. Like getting paddled can really like have a horrible impact on your education. It can really make you learn that and make you very fearful of like learning. So I think that the learning environment should be um, less. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like um, less threatening. So obviously, like students need to know that there's things that they can and can't do in a classroom, um, and they can learn that without feeling threatened or feeling like severely punished, like how corporal punishment would make them feel. So I think that that can really like teach them to really not like learning, especially if they like don't understand why, if they're just getting paddled for something they did wrong and not understanding why it was wrong. That's really detrimental. If you can punish a student by talking through them like this was wrong because you did this, or you can't like you can't punch someone in a classroom because you just can't do that, and having that conversation with them of why their behavior was wrong instead of just hitting them and them not knowing why it was wrong. So I think that like I just think it has really negative impact on students' education, because they can be afraid to do things and not know why they got in trouble if it's not explained to them in um, a more humane fashion than using corporal punishment. So the next question said, did your schools have corporal punishment policies in place? So no, they did not. Mostly our punishments, I'm trying to remember. I mean, in high school, by then, there wasn't really a lot of things wrong, especially like in the classes that I took in high school. There was hardly any. I mean, there was rarely punishment that had to happen. I know, like, in the study hall, like, a punishment would if you did something wrong would be like to go to the office. Like, the study hall monitor would just send you to the office. Um, so that's like one of the punishments. In middle school, going to the principal's office was a punishment, or like having to stay after school for detention was punishment. Um, in elementary school, I remember like a lot of my teachers were pretty old fashioned in elementary school, so I think that they did use corporal. I'm almost positive at some point in their career they had used corporal punishment, but I think that my school district like told them that they couldn't do that anymore. So you could tell that they were pretty aggressive, but they never used corporal punishment. It was just a lot of like in your face yelling type of stuff. In elementary school, and that wasn't all my teachers, but the ones that were pretty old fashioned, like that's kind of what they did. It got the point across. I know I got yelled at once and I never did something again, so I mean, that makes sense. And then another punishment would be like going to the office or um, like having to go out in the hallway or like not being allowed to go to recess or just things like that. Um, so yeah. Um, so using specific content from Chapter 9, say other forms of punishment or compliance strategies that would work best. So obviously, like I do my field work in a high school, but I also do field work to fulfill a class requirement in an elementary school. So obviously, I couldn't use the same forms of punishment with my high schoolers that I could my first graders. Um, so I think like sometimes with like little kids, the thing that works best is pulling them aside and saying, "Hey, you did this, and this is why like you can't do that again." And having like the first time they do it, like have a like an interaction with them that it's not threatening, but they have to know they did something wrong and why it's wrong and why they shouldn't do it again, and make sure they know that like you're not mad at them. It's just like there's rules that you have to follow, and like if they did something wrong, then they need to know that like it is wrong and why it's wrong. And then if they do it again, then like you can take more not severe but more I don't know what the right word is, just more further action to make sure they don't do it again. So like pulling them out of a group or like telling them that they can't go to recess and things like that, that aren't threatening, but teach them that like you already had a conversation with them that they can't do something, and then they did it again, so they have to have a punishment to it, and that could be taking away recess, taking away like fun things that they have to do. And so for high schoolers, I know like I work in a self-contained study hall, a um, an inclusion English class, and a self-contained English class. So a lot of my students have IEPs for behavioral issues and a lot of like specific learning disabilities. So the kids that have behavioral issues, um, that's just hard because like I'm only a sophomore, so I haven't gone through a lot of my like ABA classes yet. So for me, it's like when I punish them, it's like I just I'm real with them. Like, hey, like you can't do that. Like, why are you making that choice? Like, what about this choice is a good choice? Like, asking them things like that. And then a lot of times my mentor teacher will like call home, and that's like kind of her punishment, which I don't really know how effective that is. Because like the things that they do happen every single day. And her calling home, I don't know that that's, I think they've just been so desensitized to her calling home that it's not even a punishment anymore. So I don't really know. It's really interesting to see. But there's definitely things that you can do. Like, I think that approaching everything as like students are humans and we're humans and having that conversation with them, like human to human, is really important. I really believe in that. But like, for sure, what I don't believe in as an educator is corporal punishment. I don't think that's effective at all. I don't think students should feel threatened in their learning environment. So I think that was the last question. I apologize for how horrible I sound. I have a sinus infection again. So thanks for listening to me. Have a good day.